The grandeur of the Forrester mansion has always served as a majestic backdrop for the most intense family dramas, a fortress of wealth, legacy, and closely guarded secrets. On this particular evening, the atmosphere within the opulent living room is already suffocatingly thick with the lingering tension of recent corporate wars and deeply personal betrayals. Ridge Forrester and Brooke Logan Forrester stand together, attempting to find a fleeting moment of solace amidst the chaotic storm that has recently battered their family. The fierce rivalry between Forrester Creations and Logan Creations has left emotional scars on everyone, and the couple is desperately trying to hold their fractured world together. The crackling fireplace casts long, dancing shadows across the room, offering a false sense of warmth and security. Little do they know, the foundation of their entire existence is about to be violently ripped apart by the arrival of a ghost from the past, a woman carrying a secret so destructive it will permanently alter the Forrester dynasty. The heavy, ornate oak doors of the mansion swing open with a resounding thud, shattering the fragile peace that Ridge and Brooke had momentarily cultivated. Standing in the grand entryway is Darcy Dillon, a woman whose fierce, formidable presence immediately commands the attention of the room. Darcy is not merely a concerned mother arriving to check on her daughter, Melissa Dillon. She is a woman on a calculated mission of monumental proportions. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, lock directly onto Ridge, bypassing the luxurious surroundings and the questioning gaze of Brooke. There is a dangerous confidence in Darcy's posture, a triumphant aura of someone who has held a winning hand in the shadows for decades and is finally ready to lay her cards on the table. The air in the room instantly grows freezing cold as Ridge steps forward, his brow furrowed in deep confusion, demanding to know the reason for this unprecedented and highly intrusive interruption in his home. Darcy does not flinch under Ridge's authoritative tone. Instead, a bitter, knowing smile plays upon her lips. She slowly steps into the center of the living room, her gaze sweeping over the extravagant wealth that surrounds them, a stark contrast to the life she has led. Brooke steps closer to her husband, her maternal and protective instincts flaring up instantly as she senses the imminent danger radiating from this unexpected guest. Darcy begins to speak, her voice steady and laced with years of suppressed resentment. She ignores Brooke entirely, focusing her piercing stare solely on Ridge. She begins to weave a narrative of the past, transporting Ridge back to a highly specific, painful timeline many years ago. It was a dark period of profound vulnerability, a time when Ridge and Brooke's legendary romance had temporarily shattered, leaving Ridge adrift in a sea of heartache and reckless decisions. As Darcy meticulously recounts the details of that distant, lonely summer, the color begins to drain from Ridge's handsome face. He remembers the brief, passionate, and ultimately meaningless fling he shared with Darcy during that devastating separation from Brooke. It was an encounter born out of immense pain and desperation, a fleeting moment of connection that he had long since buried in the deepest recesses of his memory, believing it to be a closed chapter with no lingering consequences. Brooke listens with growing horror, her heart pounding against her ribs as she watches the undeniable recognition dawn in her husband's eyes. Darcy's words are precise, cutting through the silence like a sharpened blade, meticulously setting the stage for the ultimate revelation. She speaks of the aftermath of their brief affair, the silence that followed, and the heavy burden she carried alone while Ridge returned to his glamorous life and his beloved Brooke. Then, with the devastating impact of an atomic bomb, Darcy Dillon drops the revelation that will echo through the halls of the Forrester mansion for eternity. Her voice rings out clear and absolute as she declares that Ridge Forrester is the biological father of her daughter, Melissa Dillon. The sheer magnitude of the statement sucks all the oxygen out of the room, leaving behind a deafening, paralyzing silence. Time seems to completely stand still. The crackling of the fire is the only sound that dares to break the suffocating quiet. The words hang in the air, heavy and inescapable, fundamentally rewriting the history of everyone present. Melissa Dillon is not just a lowly assistant, a grasping outsider, or a girl desperately trying to infiltrate the wealthy families of Los Angeles. She is a legitimate, blood-born heir to the Forrester empire. Ridge is entirely immobilized, struck by a psychological paralysis so profound that he cannot even draw a breath. His mind races at 1,000,000 miles an hour, desperately trying to reject the horrifying truth, but the undeniable math and Darcy's unwavering conviction leave him with no escape. The daughter. He has a biological daughter walking the halls of his company, interacting with his family, living a life he was completely oblivious to. The immense guilt crashes over him like a tidal wave. He thinks of the years he missed, the fatherly duties he never fulfilled, and the absolute stranger his own flesh and blood has become. The legendary designer, a man who commands international fashion empires with a single word, is reduced to a trembling, speechless shell of a man, suffocating under the weight of an illegitimate child he never knew existed. Beside him, Brooke Logan Forrester experiences a devastation so deep it threatens to tear her soul apart. The betrayal hits her with the force of a physical blow, knocking the wind from her lungs. She has endured decades of Ridge's infidelities, his wavering heart, and his complicated entanglements with other women, but this is an entirely different level of trauma. This is a living, breathing consequence of a time when he was not hers. The foundation of their marriage, already heavily strained by the ongoing corporate warfare between Forrester and Logan Creations, begins to violently crack beneath her feet. Brooke stares at Ridge, seeing the agonizing truth reflected in his devastated eyes. She realizes that while they were separated, his reckless actions created a permanent, unbreakable tie to Darcy Dillon, a tie that will now forever intrude upon their lives and their family. The emotional turmoil within Brooke rapidly morphs into a fierce, blinding panic. She thinks of her own children, of the carefully constructed legacy they have built, and how this sudden revelation threatens to destabilize everything. Melissa Dillon, a girl who has been deeply entangled in the messy romantic lives of the younger generation, is now inextricably linked to Ridge. Brooke's mind flashes to the recent conflicts, the fierce battles for corporate supremacy, and the delicate balance of power within the family. The introduction of a new, unexpected Forrester heir is a catastrophic variable that Brooke cannot control. The tears well up in her eyes, not just for the pain of the past betrayal, but for the dark, uncertain, and undoubtedly chaotic future that now stretches out before them. The sanctity of her home has been violated by the inescapable sins of her husband's past. Just as the shockwave of Darcy's confession begins to settle into a grim reality, the doors to the living room open once more, and Steffy Forrester Finnegan steps into the fray. Steffy, already exhausted and traumatized by her ongoing battles with Sheila Carter and the devastating betrayal of Hope Logan, stops dead in her tracks as she takes in the horrifying scene before her. The palpable tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife. When the staggering truth is finally relayed to her, Steffy's initial confusion instantly transforms into a blazing, defensive fury. She has spent her entire adult life fiercely guarding the Forrester legacy, ruthlessly protecting her birthright from outsiders, gold diggers, and rival factions. Now, the ultimate threat to her throne has emerged not from a rival company, but from her own father's bloodline. Steffy's mind immediately calculates the catastrophic corporate and personal ramifications of this discovery. Melissa Dillon is suddenly elevated from a mere employee to a legitimate half-sister, a woman who possesses the exact same Forrester blood that flows through Steffy's veins. The immense paranoia that has always driven Steffy kicks into high gear. She perceives Melissa not as a newly discovered family member to be welcomed, but as a highly ambitious, dangerous rival who has just been handed the ultimate weapon. Steffy knows all too well the hunger and desperation that Melissa has exhibited in her recent pursuits of Will Spencer and R.J. Forrester. Armed with the Forrester name, Melissa's ambition will undoubtedly skyrocket, transforming her into a formidable adversary who could legitimately challenge Steffy for control, shares, and influence within Forrester Creations. For Melissa Dillon, who is soon summoned to the mansion to face this reality-altering truth, the psychological shift is nothing short of astronomical. For months, Melissa has operated under the guise of the obedient assistant, while secretly harboring intense ambitions to secure her status by attaching herself to wealthy heirs. She endured the tyrannical, abusive behavior of Elektra Forrester, swallowing her pride to maintain her position. She manipulated her way into the beds and hearts of the Spencer and Forrester men, desperately trying to forge a permanent connection to power. Now, as Darcy reveals her true paternity in front of the stunned Forrester patriarch, Melissa realizes she never needed to marry into the dynasty. She does not need to beg for a seat at the table. She inherently owns the table. The realization washes over her, replacing her calculated subservience with a sudden, intoxicating surge of absolute empowerment. Melissa looks at Ridge, the man she only knew as her intimidating employer, and sees the terrified, guilt-ridden face of her biological father. She looks at Steffy, the fierce CEO who always looked down upon her, and sees a sister she now stands shoulder to shoulder within the line of succession. The days of Melissa Dillon bowing her head and taking orders are permanently over. A new, dangerous glint appears in her eyes as she absorbs the magnitude of her new identity. She possesses the Forrester blood, the undeniable right to the name, and the legal standing to claim her rightful piece of the multi-million-dollar fashion empire. The ambitious outsider has instantly transformed into the ultimate insider, and she is fully prepared to leverage her newfound status to exact revenge on everyone who ever treated her as less than an equal. However, the ascension of Melissa Dillon brings with it a horrifying, sickening consequence that threatens to completely destroy the psychological sanity of the younger generation. The devastating truth of Melissa's paternity casts a dark, traumatic shadow over her recent romantic entanglements. The room collectively realizes the catastrophic implication of Melissa's recent passionate affair with R.J. Forrester. R.J., Ridge and Brooke's beloved son, had recently deepened his romance with Melissa, sharing intimate, steamy encounters at his beach house to move on from past heartbreaks. The horrifying reality crashes down upon Ridge and Brooke with the force of a freight train. Their son has been sleeping with his own half-sister. The sheer revulsion and absolute tragedy of this incestuous revelation is a direct, unforgivable result of Darcy's decades of silence, a twisted fate that will undoubtedly leave R.J. permanently scarred. The impending psychological breakdown of R.J. Forrester will be a tragedy of epic proportions. When R.J. learns the truth, the memories of his passionate nights with Melissa will instantly turn from romantic milestones into sources of profound, nauseating trauma. The young designer, who had aggressively fought Will Spencer for Melissa's affections and championed her within the company, will be entirely broken by the realization of their shared bloodline. Ridge will have to watch his son spiral into an abyss of disgust and betrayal, knowing that his own past indiscretions and Darcy's calculated secrecy paved the way for this unimaginable nightmare. The family unit, already fragile, will be completely shattered by the weight of this dark, taboo reality, creating a wound so deep that no amount of time or therapy may ever truly heal it. Furthermore, the revelation completely upends the toxic dynamic between Melissa and Elektra Forrester. Elektra, who recently allowed her ego to balloon out of control, had aggressively abused her power to threaten Melissa's job and banish her from the family circle. Elektra operated under the arrogant assumption that she, as Eric Forrester's granddaughter, held absolute authority over a lowly assistant. Now, the hierarchy is violently flipped on its head. Melissa, as Ridge's direct biological daughter, technically holds a higher, more direct generational claim to the Forrester legacy than Electra. The moment Melissa embraces her identity as a true Forrester, she will undoubtedly turn her sights on Electra, ready to unleash a ruthless campaign of vengeance and corporate domination against the woman who tried to destroy her career and humiliate her. The power struggle at Forrester Creations is about to enter an unprecedented era of internal warfare, with Hope Logan having already defected to Logan Creations, causing a massive external crisis. The company cannot afford a civil war. Yet that is exactly what Darcy Dillon has ignited. Steffy Forrester Finnegan will immediately mobilize her allies, viewing Melissa as an existential threat that must be neutralized at all costs. Steffy will demand that Ridge disavow this new daughter, forcing Ridge into an agonizing, impossible choice between the daughter he raised and the daughter he abandoned. Ridge, consumed by guilt and the desire to make amends, will likely attempt to bring Melissa into the fold, inadvertently fueling Steffy's paranoia and rage. The boardroom will transform into a bloody battlefield where family loyalty is weaponized and corporate shares become the ultimate prize. Brooke Logan Forrester will find herself caught in the crossfire of this devastating conflict. While she will demand Ridge's absolute loyalty, she will also have to manage the profound psychological trauma inflicted upon her son, RJ. Brooke's hatred for Darcy Dillon will reach volcanic levels, viewing the woman not just as a former lover of her husband, but as the architect of her son's ultimate humiliation and pain. Brooke will align herself with Steffy, putting aside their historical differences to present a united front against the infiltration of Darcy and Melissa. The Logan and Forrester women, usually at each other's throats, may find a common enemy in the newly crowned Forrester heir, leading to ruthless, calculated schemes to strip Melissa of her newfound power and drive her out of Los Angeles forever.